I saw Spartacus when I was, junior high age, and I was like, what is this? I didn't like it. It wasn't until years later that I understood the politics of the movie Spartacus that I really appreciated it. Spartacus, the movie, it's based on a novel about Spartacus written by Howard Fast, who was a member of the Communist Party. And then they had Dalton Trumbo, another member of the Communist Party, write the screenplay. And then they made the movie as a friendly gesture to the Soviet Union. The movie was a gesture to the Soviet Union. It was part of the thawing of McCarthyism, and it was the Kennedy administration and the CIA sending a message to Soviet filmmakers and intellectuals. Look, we can make a communist movie in America, and you can't make a pro-capitalist movie in the Soviet Union. And it was very much. I mean, it was the USA sending a message to Soviet intellectuals. Um, it was part of the Cold War liberalism, part of the Congress for Cultural Freedom. But it's a really well-made film, and and the message of the film is that you should align with the liberals. I mean, it's about fascism, basically, is that Rome, there's a huge slave revolt, and in response to the slave revolt, Rome becomes a fascist government with the military-industrial complex takes over the government. Crassus becomes the dictator. And so the way that Spartacus's son is able to get free and to escape is because, they align with the liberals who want to preserve democracy against the militarist right wing. It's urging communists of the world to vote for the Democrats, basically, is what the film is about. But it's still a well-made film. And it's pretty clear that, the area when the slaves have their freedom and they set up this, socialistic society in the mountains that's supposed to be like the Soviet Union. And Crassus is supposed to be Hitler. He's supposed to be a military dictator. It's the politics of the Popular Front. It's the politics of Gus Hall and the Communist Party political line that was against fascism, aligning with the Democrats. That's basically the message of the film. But it's a well-made film, but I didn't enjoy it until I understood the politics. One funny thing about Spartacus, the movie, is that it's anti-gay. Crassus, the villain, is portrayed as a homosexual, and that's supposed to be a sign that he's so evil. And it also plays into the idea that fascists were homosexual, which was actually in the Soviet Union, that was a widely believed thing, was that Nazis and fascists were all gay. That was a big point of Soviet propaganda. And in the film Spartacus, they portray Crassus as he's the Hitler of Rome, basically. He's this militarist dictator, and he's gay. And he tries to rape one of his slaves, and the slave runs away from him. So I think that's kind of hilarious, actually. I mean, it's sad. I mean, obviously we don't want to stigmatize gay people, but that was a communist belief about fascism, was that fascism was rooted in homosexuality. It was some kind of Freudian thing that fascists are gay people that are repressing it. And so they love militarism and marching in uniforms and stuff like that because they're gay and can't admit it. That was a really common belief in the Soviet Union. And actually, what's interesting is during the early 60s, right, this period where we saw McCarthyism breaking, this movie comes out, Spartacus. They portray Crassus as a homosexual fascist. George Lincoln Rockwell, who was the leader of the American Nazi Party, right? Many of the opponents of George Lincoln Rockwell claimed that the American Nazi Party was a homosexual front. And it was based on this same belief. And this was a belief in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, they believed that fascism was the result of repressed homosexual feelings. I kid you not. This was a very widely believed. So it was put out in the press at the time that George Lincoln Rockwell's Nazi Party was actually a homosexual front. And there was some logic to that, because we know that, Ernst Rem, who was the founder of Hitler's SS, was gay. Then Hitler had the Night of Long Knives and killed him. But many of the early Nazis, the stormtroopers, were gay. That's true. And that prior to the rise of the Nazis, Germany had been the center of the gay rights movement. There was a whole institute for studying homosexuality that had been built by the Weimar government. And there were gay bars and drag shows all over Berlin. And, there was, that was a widespread belief. and that Freudian psychoanalysis was very popular in the Soviet Union. Sabina Spielrein, who was considered she's like a founding father of Freudian psychoanalysis. She died in the Second World War. She worked directly with Sigmund Freud. She worked directly with Carl Jung. And then she went to the Soviet Union, and she died in World War II. She was murdered by the Nazis when they took over the city she was living in, and they killed all the Jews in the city. And that many of the Soviet bureaucrats, a lot of the Soviet bureaucracy was really into Freudianism and psychoanalysis. So psychoanalytic thinking was very widespread in the Soviet Union, and traditional psychoanalysis views homosexuality in a negative light, views homosexuality as being a deviation caused by childhood trauma or improper relationships with one's parents that one can get over through psychoanalytic therapy. Modern psychoanalysis has obviously moved away from that, but classical Freudian thinking is believing that homosexuality is a deviation, but also believing that it's everywhere, right? And there's something to be said for that. I mean, nowadays, if people are gay, they're just gay, right? But back before there was a gay rights movement, there were a lot of people who were gay and were expressing it in different ways, right? And so the belief that all these people that are enthusiastic about men in uniforms and marching and boots and all of that, that they're all, they're gay people who are like in denial, you can see how somebody, coming at things from the Freudian belief that homosexuality is rooted in like developmental problems. And on top of that, the belief that which was probably true at the time, there was a lot of people that are gay that are like suppressing it, that are like in denial of their own gay feelings. You can understand why that was widely believed in the Soviet Union, that homosexuality and that Nazism was an expression of suppressed homosexual feelings, that fascism and militarism, the ultra masculinity of the far right wing, that this was the result of suppressed homosexual feelings. The thing is, that argument doesn't stand today, because nowadays when people are gay, they're just gay. I mean, look, is Milo Yiannopoulos suppressing his homosexual feelings? Clearly not. He's very clearly gay. So this idea that, the Proud Boys, they're all just gay and won't admit it to themselves, so they're becoming fascists, it doesn't stand up. It's ridiculous, right? If they were going to be gay, they'd just be gay. Milo Yiannopoulos is gay. There's plenty of gay fascists walking around. I view it, I'll just be honest with you. Either way, right? If I were to make these streams all about trans rights and canceling transphobes and calling out bigots who are oppressing trans people, if I were to do that, or I were to do the opposite, and I would, talk the way kind of like Tulsi Gabbard is talking right now and highlight people who've detransitioned and call it child abuse and stuff like that. If I were to do either of those things, the ruling class wins. That's what they want us to be talking about. They want us to have a culture war over that. And I don't want to. I want to create an atmosphere of love where any person who comes around who is dealing with, issues around their gender feels loved and accepted, number one. And number two, I want to talk about economics and socialism. I want to talk about the need to stop the wars and the class struggle and anti-imperialism. I don't want to talk about, the medical benefits of gender surgery, the ethics of who should be included in women's sports versus men's sports. I just don't want to talk about it. And that a lot of people don't get that. They think, okay, the synthetic left, they're obsessed with the pro-trans position. So if we take the anti-trans position, we're sticking it to them. No, you're not. You're giving them exactly what they want. That is exactly what they want. And you'll notice that even though I never talk about that issue on these streams, ever, I mean, I just don't go there other than saying I love my trans friends and, and I don't like how leftist spaces are dominated by discussion of this issue. Other than that, I don't really go there. But the people who hate me have you convinced? I mean, apparently all I do on these streams is just spew hatred for black people and hatred for trans people the whole time. My opponents think I am a raving transphobe because I'm friends with people that have said things that are critical on the issue. And that shows you, the fact that they're trying to paint me as that shows you that it would be very useful to them if that was that. I am just not here to talk about the trans issue. I'm just not. I don't know enough about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I must say this, I'm not talking about trans people here, right? So don't get me wrong. I am not talking about trans people. I'm talking about people who are not trans but pro-trans, and even some of the people that are anti-trans. And this is going to make a lot of people mad, but I must say it. I think the reason a lot of people fixate on that issue is because it turns them on. Now, I'm not talking about trans people. Trans people, that's a separate thing. But some of these people that are obsessively pro-trans, they're watching videos all about the surgeries people go through and the details, they're getting titillated by it. And some of the people who are obsessively anti-trans, they're like, oh my God, I'm so upset. They're getting titillated by it, right? This is about genitals. This is about hormones. This is about body parts and clothing. And some people are getting turned on by this. Some people are getting turned on by it. I just said it, okay? And it must be said. And I'm not talking about the trans people. I'm talking about the people who fixate on that issue who are not trans. Some of them are getting off on it, okay? Because the amount of detail these people go into great about this stuff. I mean, if you're actually trans, I understand getting into detail about it, or if a family member is trans or something. But there's a lot of people who just sit on the internet thinking about trans stuff all day long. And I mean, I'm looking at this as an outsider, and I am convinced that a lot of those people are turned on by it, and you can get mad at me for saying that, and you can call me a hypocrite or whatever. I don't care anymore. I am convinced that the reason that so many people think that needs to be the focus of everything, pro or con, is because it's a titillating subject. So I that's what I think. I think, they want us thinking about below the belt topics. They want us thinking about, ways that people's um ways that people's genitals can be altered, and people that are against it, they go into gross and all kinds of detail about it, and people that are for it, they go into gross and all kind of detail about it, and I'm convinced that people are titillated by it. So I'm sorry if this live stream will not become an opportunity to turn you on, but it's just not gonna. So there you go.